don't forget. Okay, so I have started the record button. And I'll just keep an eye in case anybody is still joining, but I don't want to dally because I know some of you might have a session later on, and then we don't want to miss everything that we've got to do. Okay, let me just make this, that's better. Okay, Darshan, the pacer. Okay, so if you go to your resources, you will find, well, actually, let me just quickly show you. Okay, so if I go to, let me go to this one here, 7321, you go to your module code, and when it loads, go to more resources. And then right here, I've pinned it right to the top, semester 1 schedule. And it's this document here that I have drawn up as from week 1 all the way through to the end of the exams, week by week, laying out what you've got to do each, what's on your for that week. Yeah. I should really maybe go and rename it the pacer, because sometimes some people call it the schedule and some people call it the pacer, but same thing. Okay, all right, so I'll tell you what, okay, before I start again, officially welcome everybody. We were chatting a little bit before I pressed record, but for those that are listening, so this is our last week before your task 1. So next week, this is week 5, next week is week 6, and you will write your task 1 on Tuesday. So the day of Tuesday is where you'll be busy with your task 1. Let me just go and have a look. So EF, sorry, I don't know what your name, what your full name is. I'll just have to call you EF. Where are you going to write the assignment? You're going to write your task at home. It's going to be released to you and you'll write it at home in those 24 hours available to you, or at home, wherever you've got access to your laptop and the internet. And then you will upload it when you are completed, and then I will get that done. Task 1 is online. I'm not sure what you mean by online. It's not online as in that you're going to log on, do the task online and then log off. The task document will be made available to you. You'll download the question paper, work on it in your own time offline in those 24 hours, and when you've completed it, then you'll upload it. If you guys go through the previous recordings of the collabs, we did have quite long discussions about the whole procedure there. So I don't want to take up time this evening in going over that again. Okay, I think last week I went through the whole thing and I showed you where all the links were, where you'll find the document, where you must go to upload it and all of that. Monica says she doesn't see anything under ICE tasks. Okay, let me quickly go. If you watch the screen as well, I'm still here in more resources. Okay, hopefully Monica's watching. So if you scroll down on your more resources, you'll see that's the pacer. Here's your module guide and the pairs. And then right underneath here, there's this item called ICE activities. You don't have to click on anything. All you have to do is read the screen. I've pasted it onto the screen so that you don't have to click anywhere. This is, here are your ICE tasks. So just read all the details. Each of these sentences and instructions on here explains to you exactly how that's going to work. Okay, so there's your ICE tasks right there in more resources. Darshan, your previous recordings in announcements, go to announcements, and every day or the day after every collab, then I post the link to the previous recording in announcements. So you should have been getting, are you not getting your emails for the announcements, Darshan? Are you getting those emails? Make sure you are tracking your email address that you use for IE. In other words, I'm not sure what your guys, it's called IE Connect or Varsity College, your Varsity College email address. That's where all the announcements will be going. You must track that, or otherwise log on to Learn and regularly go through the announcements. That's where everything is. Hi, Monica, go ahead and you can open your mic and talk.
Hi, ma'am. Can you hear me?
Oh, sorry, I can now. I just had to increase my volume. Okay.
Okay.
Yes.
So I just wanted to understand based on the task 1 that we have. So what you said is it's going to be available to us. So at 11 o'clock, well, 12 o'clock, correct, on the 26th. And then we download the question paper and then we can do it whenever we want to. And then we hand it in before the 27th, basically. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. It has to be handed in before midnight on the 26th. So the date of your upload must be the 26th, sometime on the 26th of March.
So it's not limited to 2 hours once we open it?
No. You've got the whole 24 hours.
All right. No,
so
perfect. Thank you so much.
From midnight on the 25th until midnight on the 26th.
All right. Perfect. Thank you so much.
Okay. And they have posted something, I don't know if you guys have seen it, for any late submissions. So any submissions that are uploaded after midnight on the 26th, there will be a 15% time penalty or late penalty. So we'll automatically deduct 15% of whatever mark you get if you upload it even 1 minute after midnight on the 26th. And then anything that's more than 24 hours late won't be marked. That's what we've been told to do. Okay. Claude, yes, I do understand that a lot of the students in distance space are full-time workers, and that's why they've given you 24 hours to do the task. So when you come home from work on that Tuesday, the 26th, then you'll download your task and you'll work on it from when you come home from work up until midnight. You've got all of those hours. So the tasks are 100 marks. So if we work on the principle that you should be able to complete tasks and tests and exams at the rate of 1 mark per minute, theoretically it should take you 100 minutes to complete the task. And you shouldn't need longer than that. So let's say 120 minutes, 2 hours. You should be able to complete the task comfortably within 2 to 3 hours max. So this is also why I've been saying to you guys, make sure that you study before the date of the task as if you were preparing for a test, so that in those hours that you've got to write that task, you're very familiar with your textbook, you know where to locate everything, you know what your calculations are, you know where your theory is and what it is, and then you can easily complete it within those 2 to 3 hours. No referencing. Yeah, only referencing if there's theory, and you don't have to reference any equations or calculations. That's correct. And also, because this is a numeric module, you don't have to go to town on referencing, but because we are always instructed to insist on referencing with the students, even in ICE tasks, if you do an ICE task and you've used outside sources, you need to reference that as well. It's just to get you guys into the habit of making sure that you, as academics, we have to reference our work to make sure that we're not falling into the plagiarism trap. Okay, let me just see if I've missed any other. Okay, I think I've got all the questions that were posted. Anybody got any other questions? You can, Monica, go ahead.
Sorry, I'm like the student that just keeps asking questions. So in Learning Unit 2, right, we have calculations where you use the formula, the table, and the calculator, correct, for the future value, all of those things, right? So I just wanted to know, because all of them have the same answer. In the test that we have, if they don't ask for all three workings, is it fine if I only use one? For example, the calculator one, because it's quicker.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So, and I'll show you, I'm going to go through a past paper with you guys now, just to give you a bit of revision. Sometimes in a question, they'll say, use the tables. And in that case, you must use the tables and look up the factor and use that. If they don't give any indication of telling you what method to use, you can use any method. You can use the tables, you can use the calculator, or you can use the formula. And you only need to use one.
Okay, thank you.
And it can, perfect, and it can be any one of the three. So obviously the calculator method is quicker. Just make sure you are notating not all the steps that you use on the calculator, just exactly like they do in the textbook, and you'll be absolutely fine. Okay. All right, so if no one's got any other questions, and of course you're welcome to ask questions as we go along as well, but I want to just get started to make sure that I finish at least one of the papers that I want to go through with you. Oh, you were gonna ask the same thing that Monica asked. Okay, yeah. Okay, so I am sharing my screen at the moment. So now I'm just going to go over here to my PDF files, and I've got. Sorry, let me just quickly go and check something here. 5122. I don't need that open. I hope everything I want is open. Where's the other part of this? Oh, there we go. Okay, so this is a past paper that covers Learning Unit 1 and Learning Unit 2, which are the two learning units that you guys are going to be doing in your task, okay? Just the first two learning units. So let's go and have a look through this paper and see what kind of questions they asked, how the marks were allocated, and how the answer would have been laid out. Okay, so in Learning Unit 1, right at the end of the chapter, there is that EVA calculation, which is really the only calculation type question that we've got from LU1. The rest of LU1 is really theory. So this first question here is an EVA question, EVA, economic value added. So for 15 marks, you've been provided with the following information relating to Raiders Limited for the year ended 31 July 2016. So in this particular question, they only gave you information for one particular year. Sorry, I just want to go to, do I want, sorry, I can't remember what I want. I want the comment. Let me just quickly open the comments so I can write on here as well as we go along. You'll see in some questions, and like in the example in your textbook on page 9, the information that was given to you there was for 2 years, 2002 and 2003. So this is only the information here. If we had a column heading, this is only for 2016. Oh, this thing is going to be slow. So what they've given us is extracts from the Statement of Comprehensive Income, revenue, and remember revenue is what we get at the top line of our income statement, and then profit before tax. So we really want to make sure that you guys, I want to make sure that you guys read your questions carefully. Sometimes it will say profit before tax, sometimes they'll give you profit after tax. So keep your eyes open and make sure you read carefully what they've given you. They'll give you, in this case, revenue and profit before tax, again, just to test, to make sure that you know which of those two amounts you need to use when you calculate NOPAT. Again on page 9 in your textbooks. Then we've got extracts from the Statement of Financial Position. So this is also information for the year 2016. And they've given us equity and then interest-bearing bank loans, which the company has, but there's a question mark there, which means we're going to have to calculate the total. So the total capital utilized by the company is made up of equity and interest-bearing bank loans. We know how much equity is, but we're going to have to calculate what the rand value of the bank loans is. Then additional information, the company's WACC is 8.75%. Corporate tax rate of 28% applies. That's in this particular paper. And again, I'm going to just remind you guys that the corporate tax rate has changed now to 27%. So again, please read your paper carefully. You'll get some papers that might still say 28% and some papers that will say 27%. And make sure you have to use whatever percentage is on the paper that's given to you. Then including within profit are the following. Depreciation. So in other words, in calculating this profit before tax, we've already deducted depreciation. And in this case, depreciation is the same for accounting and tax purposes, and it's 65,000. There is an interest expense of 27,500. So that would be interest before tax. And then other non-cash expenses of 45,000. So all of that is already included in this profit before tax. Required if the EVA is being calculated as 233,950, so they're giving us the EVA, we have to then calculate the amount of the interest-bearing bank loans as at the 31st of July 2016. So this is what you have to calculate with the information given to you. So this is very typical of the way that they will ask questions. You are third years, so instead of you using the EVA formula and you filling in everything else and having to calculate EVA, they'll give you EVA and then you'll have to calculate one of the other variables in the EVA formula. They'll change it up in that manner again, just to test that you, just to make it a little bit more challenging than just doing things straightforward out the textbook. Okay. All right, so everybody happy with the information that they've given us, the additional information? So let's go and have a look at what this calculation looked like. There we go. All right, let me also just open comments here. Okay, so the first thing that we have to calculate is NOPAT, net operating profit after tax. So we start with calculating profit after tax. So remember, they gave us profit before tax, the 320,000. We have subtracted the 28%, that's the 28% tax, giving us our profit after tax. Then according to our EVA, the steps that we have to follow, and these steps are laid out for us in your textbook in example 1.1. The top of page 9, those bullet points 1, 2, 3, 4, they tell us exactly what steps you've got to follow to calculate NOPAT and then to calculate your invested capital, and then you can do your EVA calculation. So according to those steps, if there are any non-cash expenses in our income statement for the year, we have to add that back to profit, because we want to calculate after-tax cash flow only. So they gave us 45,000 non-cash, that gets added back to the after-tax profit. And then because we are going to in the EVA calculation, we take net operating profit after tax, but before interest costs. And if you look at the formula on page 8, EVA is equal to NOPAT minus what invested capital times WACC, which is basically our interest cost or our cost of capital in rand values. So because we're going to take the cost of interest into account in the formula, at this point in calculating NOPAT, we add the interest expense back, because NOPAT is net operating profit after tax, but before deducting any interest. So because we want this NOPAT 295,200 must be an after-tax figure, net operating profit after tax, we must add back the interest also after tax. So they told us that our interest expense, in other words, the straightforward interest expense, was 27,500. So taking the tax shield of interest expense into account, the actual cash flow of our interest expense would have been 19,800. So we're going to add that back to the interest after tax as well. So we end up with a net operating profit after tax of 295,200. So these are your standard steps that you do. You must work out your profit after tax, add back any non-cash expenses that they gave you. Don't take any tax into account for adding back non-cash. You can see there we've added back the gross amount of 45,000. Because a non-cash expense isn't an actual cash flow, so it won't have any tax implications. And then add back interest after tax. Then the other information that they gave us, if we go back here, was that we've got 525,000 rands worth of equity. So this equity plus interest-bearing bank loans, those two amounts added together would make up my invested capital. Invested capital is my equity plus loans or other types of debt. Okay. So we now go to our EVA formula. EVA equals NOPAT minus invested capital times WACC. We are going to, what was that? 233 amount that they gave us. Sorry, there we go. I've forgotten this bit over here. They've told us that EVA is 233,950. They gave us the answer. So they've actually, in this memo looking at this, they have, if you were saying EVA, which would be 23950, is equal to NOPAT 295,200 minus, and then in brackets would be the invested capital times WACC. Okay, so that's already, so that's what we started out with. Now, using algebra, we are going to put 295,200, and we're taking it over to the left-hand side of the equation as well. If we just used our formula like that, it would be 233,950 minus 295,200. And on the right-hand side, we would have minus invested capital times WACC. So because the left-hand side and the right-hand side would both be negative, we can then automatically convert both sides to positive. So plus 295,200 minus 233,950 equals 61,250. So the left-hand side of our equation is 61,250 on this side here. And that on the right-hand side, the equation is now reading 61250 equals invested capital times WACC. Let me just write that in over here. 61250 equals invested capital times, and we know that invested capital is 8.75%, so we can fill that in. Okay. And then we now want to solve for the invested capital my brain has just gone blank. I'll say formula, variable in the formula. That's the word I'm looking for. So in order to do that, 61250 divided by 8.75 equals invested capital. So that 700,000 is then the gross amount of invested capital. We have been given that part of invested capital is equity, which is 525,000. So if we take total invested capital 700,000 minus equity of 525,000, what's left over is then going to be my interest-bearing bank loans. Okay. How do you guys feel about that question? Did you follow that? Oh, I see loads more students have logged on since I popped over to the other screen. Okay. So you can see, guys, this is the kind of what they're really doing. And again, because you guys are third years, they are testing. They know that if you've given a formula that you can plop in all the amounts of the variables and calculate the formula and come up with an answer. They know that you can do that. So they are testing your thinking skills and your application. Can you apply what you know with the EVA formula with, if you're given a case study with all sorts of information, can you apply that case study to the formula, solving for whichever part of that formula is the missing information? Okay. Okay, good. So most of you seem to be okay with that. And the recording is here for those of you that maybe haven't had a chance to go through it yet. You'll be able to work through that afterwards as well. Okay. Then our second question for 25 marks. So guys, also this question here, you can see this, sorry, going back to question 1, it was for 15 marks. So technically speaking, you should be able to complete that question in 15 minutes, which you will be able to do if you have studied for your task as if it was a test. If you're going to be sitting with this information when you download your task and you're looking at this and you haven't yet opened your textbook and you're going to be paging frantically through the textbook trying to find where on earth in the textbook do they cover this part, then you are going to be sitting for hours with your task. So the better prepared you are, the easier, the more likely you are to get the questions correct and also give yourself lots of time. So question 2 for 25 marks, I think most of this question is theory questions. So just again gives you an idea of what they can ask. You're the investment manager of Branson Investments, and you've been requested by the managing director to conduct a presentation as part of induction training for the new intake of graduates. So guys, remember again, they are laying a scenario out for you. So you need to answer all of these questions as if you were explaining to Mr. Branson what he has asked you. Mr. Branson has said, please describe 3 types of financial institutions that we can get and provide an example of each. So the instructions to us as markers with these tasks is if you copy straight from the textbook, we are supposed to give you 0 because you guys know about paraphrasing, you know about plagiarism, and we also know that even if you use AI and copy and paste from AI, that is also plagiarism because that's not your own work and you haven't used your own words. So this is an older paper, but you'll see in new papers for 2024, they will have emphasis on use your own words, do not copy straight from the textbook. Otherwise, you will either get 0 marks or you will lose a lot of marks. Okay. And again, remember, you will have your textbook with you. This is basically an open book test that you're doing. So you'll be able to consult your textbook, but you must explain it in your own words as if you were talking to Mr. Branson. List 4 other responsibilities of financial managers. Don't list any primary responsibilities. That just says list. So quite honestly, that is list. You can't, there's nothing else they've asked you to do. Explain. So again, using your own words, explain the meaning of private placements of shares. If we say, if you want to explain to Mr. Branson, what does private placement of shares mean? How would you, in your own words, how would you go about explaining that to him? State 3 ways in which the investment decision of a business can be funded. And then for 6 marks during the training, you have emphasized to the graduates that in the current unstable economic climate, Branson Investments has made the decision to place the majority of their investments for their clients in the money market. So explain to the graduates the meaning of the term money markets. So again, own words as if you were talking to these graduates, how would you describe so that they understood fully for 6 marks. So 6 marks means 6 different facts. How would you explain money markets? Okay, I'm going to come back to that question later if you don't mind, because we're just busy going through the test at the moment. So I'm not going to bother to go through this, the memo. All of this comes directly out of the textbooks for all of these. Where am I here? For all of this question 2 through to question 2.5. Okay, so we'll skip that. That's all in your textbooks. Okay, here's a good question because they invariably ask some form or other of this question 3. So who asked me earlier? It was Monica or somebody else as well that asked about the 3 different methods in the textbooks. This is an LU2 question, time value of money. So in this particular question for 10 marks, we've got a company specializing in property development. They're analyzing their projected cash flows. Okay, so projected cash flows, over the next 4 years are expected to be the following. A report must be presented to the shareholders at the next AGM. The opportunity cost is 14% per annum. So what does opportunity cost mean? What are you going to use that 14% for? They say required 3.1 for 5 marks. Calculate the present value of the cash flows, assuming that the cash flows will occur at the end of each year. Okay, so this is what we want. We want to calculate the present value if the cash flows occur at the end of each year. So what are we going to use this? It says here opportunity cost is 14%. What are we going to use that for? Anybody? So what variables do we need when we're doing a present value calculation? What are the variables that you need? Present value of a lump sum. What are the variables involved in that formula? If you go to page 29, your present value formula. Yes, yes. IYR, or in the formula we use the, yes, Cameron's got it, future value, yes. So we're going to calculate the, yes, future value. So we're going to calculate the present value. In order to do that, we need an IYR or an R, which is our discount percentage. Yeah. We need to know what all of the future values are, because we need the future values in order to calculate the present values. Yes, Darshan, good. And we also need to know N, because we need to know how many periods to discount each of the cash flows by. Yes, Mandy, 100% correct. We use the opportunity cost as the interest rate. So if you call it the cost of capital, the WACC, the opportunity cost, the interest rate, any of those terms are interchangeable. Okay, so let's go back to that question paper. So what these values that we've got over here in these rand values that they've given us here, what variable in the formula are these? Are these present values? Are they future values? Are they PMTs? Remember, in an annuity, we've got a PMT, which is that what are these rand values? They can only be, if it's a rand value, it can only be one of three things. It can be a future value, it can be a present value, or it can be a PMT, an annuity cash flow. PMT, remember in the annuity formula, PMT is the rand value of the regular annual cash flow that you receive in an annuity. So what in this question, what are those amounts? Are they present values, future values, or annuity payments? If you think, what have they asked us to calculate? What do we have to calculate? Yes, they've asked us to calculate the present value. So Monica, you're correct. So therefore, those must be future values, because we've got to calculate the present value. So those can't be present values if we have to calculate the present value. Those are future values. So we have to discount the future values of those amounts, discount each of those future values that they've given us, and then add them together to calculate the net present value of all four of those cash flows. Okay? And in order to discount them, we need a discount percentage, which is going to be what we're going to use that 14% for. So what else have they said? They've said the cash flows will occur at the end of each year. Okay, so if we take here, this is where we are here. Okay, P. At the beginning of year 1 is the present. At the end of year 4, that is the future. So the present is here at the beginning of year 1. That first 35,500 will occur at the end of year 1. It will take place there. The minus 15 million will take place at the end of year 2. The 25,250 cash inflow will take place at the end of year 3, and the 45,500,000 cash flow will take place here at the end of year 4. In other words, at the exact future date. So this is when they will take place. We want to know what the value of all of that is at this point in time here, at the beginning of year 1, which is the present. What is the net present value of those 4 cash flows over here? In this particular question, they did not say which method that we use, but in most of the last couple of years in the tests, they have said in the same question, very similar, they've said use the tables. Okay. So in order to use the tables, what we've got to do is we've got to then say the cash flow for each year multiplied by the present value factor from the table. And then that will give me the present value of that amount. Then I go to the next cash flow and I multiply that by the present value factor from the table. I take this one and I multiply it by the present value factor from the table appropriate to that cash flow, and then the same for this one over here. When you look at this pattern of cash flows, what pattern of cash flows is this? If you go to basic patterns of cash flow in your textbook on page 27, your choices are, have we got a single amount? In other words, it's a once-off lump sum, and we're going to calculate the present or future value of that. Is it an annuity? In other words, are the amounts equal periodic amounts, either received or paid monthly or yearly? Or is this a mixed cash flow? Periodic but unequal cash flows. Yes, awesome. This is an example of a mixed cash flow. So again, you have to be able to identify that so that you know which calculation method you're going to employ to calculate your answer. So your mixed cash flows, find the page number quickly. Present value of a mixed stream of cash flows is on page 42. So if you go to page 42 in your textbooks, you'll see present value of a mixed stream of cash flows there. Okay. So when we are calculating a present value, we are calculating the present value of this amount paid in year 4, the present value of this amount from year 3, the present value of year 2, and the present value of year 1. And we are going to add them together, which will give us the net present value at that point in time. So for this, because this, let's start with this amount paid at the end of year 4. I want to know what is the present value of this amount here that was paid at the end of year 4. So I've got to discount this amount from the end of year 4 all the way through to the beginning of year 4, then from the end of year 3 to the beginning of year 3, all the way to the beginning of year 2, and then all the way to the beginning of year 1, in order to work out its present value, this amount here is its value at the end of year 4. I want to know what the value of that amount is at the beginning of year 1. So we're working from here, the end of the year, and I'm working backwards all the way to the present. Okay. So how many times did I go backwards? I went from the end of year 4 to the beginning of year 4. So that's 1. I went from the end of year 3 to the beginning of year 3. That's 2. The end of year 2 to the beginning of year 2 is 3. And from the end of year 1 all the way to the beginning of year 1, that's 4. I had to go backwards or discount this amount by 4 times or 4 periods in order to get its present value. So here's the factor that we need over here, 0.592. If you go to your present value tables in your textbook, you want the present value of a lump sum table, which is, I'm not sure in the new textbooks, in my textbook it's page 61. The heading is called present value interest factor of R1 per period at R% for n periods. That's the heading of the table that you want. Go to column 14%. This is the column that you want in your table. And then down the left-hand side of the table, you've got periods, and you want to go to 4. Because we had to go backwards 4 times in order to get all the way from the end of year 4 to the beginning of year 1 for that amount. And there you'll see that factor on the table, 0.592. Then once you've got that one, the rest are easy. For year 3, we only had to go back from the end of year 3. Go back here, sorry. Get a different color. Oh, okay, that's not going to help me. We only had to go back from the end of year 3 from here to the beginning of year 3, beginning of year 2, beginning of year 1. So I went backwards 3 times for that amount. So on our table, column for 14%, row for 3, and there's your 0.675 factor. Then year 2, I had to go back twice. That's the factor in row 2. And for year 1, I had to go back 1, because I had to go back all the way from the end of year 1. I had to go from there to the beginning of year 1. So I had to travel 365 days to get from the end of year 1 to the beginning of year 1. So I need the factor for 14% and 1 period for year 1. And then you multiply each of those out to get the present value. Please make sure those first 2 had brackets around them, which means they are cash flows out. Those 2 are positive, which means they are cash flows in. So your answer, your present value, must remain negative and remain positive. And when you add those up, make sure that you've got minus that, plus that, to then get our net present value of those 4 years of cash flow. Okay. Anybody got any questions with that? Everybody follow? Yep, calculator is absolutely fine if you're using the calculator method. But remember what I said now, they do sometimes stipulate the table method because they want to test, can you read the table and can you work out the number of periods correctly that you need to apply to the question. So if we have a look at the second part of that question, they then say calculate the future value of all the cash flows, assuming that the cash flows will occur at the beginning of each year. So now our cash flows take place here at the beginning of each year, and they want us to calculate the future value. So now we are going to travel from the beginning of year 1 all the way to the end of year 4. So to calculate the future value of this cash flow that took place in year 1, I've got to travel from the beginning of year 1, because that's when the cash flow took place, to the end of year 1, to the end of year 2, to the end of year 3, to the end of year 4. So my periods are also going to be 4. So you now want the future value interest factor table. So still 14% column, but you're now looking at the future value table. And your cash flow from year 1, you had to travel across 4 full years to get to the future. So 14% column, row 4, and you get 1.689 as the factor. Then to calculate the future value for year 2, we are going from the beginning of year 2 to the end of year 2, beginning of year 3 to the end of year 3, beginning of year 4 to the end of year 4. We had to travel in time across 3 full years. So the cash flow that took place in year 2, column 14, periods 3, in order to calculate the future value. And then year 3 had to go into the future twice, and year 4 we had to travel into the future for 1 year in order to go from the present to the future. And then same procedure, the cash flow multiplied by the factor equals the present value. Keep your brackets and then add them all together, and you then get the total future value of the cash flows, given the criteria that they gave us. Yes, exactly. So in the second scenario, we need to calculate the future value. So those amounts that we're looking at then become present values. So we know the present, the present value for each of those mixed cash flows. We know the value for N. Each one of those 4 cash flows has got a different value for N, because it'll go 4, 3, 2, 1. And they all have the same value for R, which is 14%. So with these kinds of questions, they can look very easy, but students often will either get these questions all correct and they'll get 100% for the question, or they'll get muddled up with their factors and their tables, and then they get them all wrong. So just practice. Again, this way to get this correct is if you practice. Practice with present values work into future values and vice versa. Also practice, if you went and did this question again, what I would do for homework and for preparing for the test, take the same question paper, but now work out the present value, assuming that the cash flows occur at the beginning of each year, and work out the future value if those cash flows all took place at the end of each year, and then see if you can get those answers correct as well. I will post this question paper for you when I upload the recording, so that you've got this question paper that we used in the in tonight's session. Okay. So let's just take a quick look at question 4. For 10 marks, you wish to purchase 700 non-redeemable, which means there's no maturity date, preference shares. Each one of those 700 shares is worth R5 each, and they pay a coupon value of 9% each. And a discount rate of 15% applies. Calculate the present value of our investment in these preference shares. So again, have a look at those amounts. Let's identify our pattern of cash flow. What basic pattern of cash flow are we looking at in this information that they've given us? We've basically, what type of instrument are these preference shares? They're non-redeemable, which means there's no maturity date. So that means these preference shares will last forever. And what do we call something that goes on forever and ever without ending? Yes, Oliver, I will. What do we call something that goes on, a pattern of cash flow that will continue? Yes, perpetual, in perpetuity. So we want, if we've got a cash flow that is going on into perpetuity, which formula do we want to use? Page 39. The formula is going to be called present value of perpetuity, yes. So again, if we go and have a look, what of those variables for the present value of perpetuity did they give us? We can calculate the RAND value of the PMT. In other words, what is the amount that is going to be regularly paid every single year into perpetuity? Is going to be this, the 9% coupon payment. The 9% coupon payment is the PMT. The 15% discount rate is our value for R, and we are going to calculate, we're going to calculate the present value, perpetuity. We're going to calculate the present value of a perpetuity. Formula on page 39, present value of perpetuity is PMT over R. How are you going to calculate PMT? Because you need to calculate the value of that of that coupon payment. Yep, question 2.5 exactly, Claude, that's right. You've got to say 700 times 5 to get the total RAND value of all the preference shares that they issued. And then that RAND value multiplied by 9%. And that will give you the value of those preference share dividends that they will be paying each year into perpetuity. So 700 times 5 equals 315 Rand per annum. And then PMT over R equals the present value of the perpetuity is then 2,100. Yep, perfect. Anybody got a question? I know it is coming up to 7 o'clock now, so if anybody needs to leave, if you have got another session, it will be at 7:30, or if you've got load shedding or anything else, you're welcome to leave, and that's fine. I will continue recording till the end of this question paper. So anybody that needs to leave it, the rest of the questions will be recorded, and then you can go and listen to them afterwards. And if you are able to stay, then that's also good. Okay. All right, so let's go and have a look at the next question. Okay, so 4.1 we did. Then almost there, for 5 marks, calculate the difference in interest earned on both investments. Okay, so what have they asked us to do? Calculate a difference in interest earned on both investments. So obviously we've got 2 investments. Both of them are going to be earning interest, and we want to know the difference between them. So that tells us, by looking at this question, we're going to have to calculate the interest on one investment, calculate the interest on the second investment, subtract the 2 amounts of interest, and then state our answer as the difference in interest earned between the 2 investments. I'm breaking that down because students often battle to know what they've been asked. If you know exactly what you've been asked, then you know what to go and what your calculation must look like. Okay, so we wish to invest 175,000 over a period of 5 years. We've got 2 alternative investment options. Investment 1 compounds interest biannually, which means twice a year, and investment 2, where interest will compound quarterly. Both investments, our interest rate is 12% per annum. Okay. So what is the variable that we are solving for in this calculation? This is the amount our lump sum investment is 175. We're going to invest it and it's going to stay there for 5 years. So it's an example of the type of cash flow of a single amount lump sum. We know the value for R, which is 12%, and we know the value for N for Nelly, which is 5 years. We also know the value for, as soon as we've got multiple compounding periods in any year, we have to use, our formula has to then, we've got to use N times M, and for our interest rate, we've got to use R divided by M, because we've got multiple compounding periods in a year. If interest compounds biannually, the number of compounding periods in a year will be 2, M equals 2, because interest will compound twice a year. And in this one over here, where interest compounds quarterly, interest will compound 4 times a year, so M will equal 4. Okay. All right, let's go and have a look at the workings. So again, just to go, what type of, sorry, I think I said a wrong thing just now. I'm trying to remember back in my head what I said. We're investing 175,000 over a period of 5 years. We wanting to solve the amount of interest that is being paid. That amount of interest is going to be the same rand value each time the interest is paid over the course of 5 years. So I'm going to have a regular amount being paid periodically over 5 years. So this is the interest payments are an example of an annuity. Okay, so the interest payments are an annuity type cash flow. So this over here is future value of an annuity. Here they've used, where are those workings that I did earlier today? They've used the tables. So interest value, future value of an annuity for 5 years. But remember this 1791, which one is that? Let me just get the right one. Just quickly looking for the table for future value of an annuity. I don't want to give you the wrong present value, future value of an ordinary annuity. 1791. This is going to be 10 and 6. Just making sure I've got the right calculation. Sorry guys, I'm just trying to find the right column. Why can't I see it here? Okay, it's not a future value. I want it's a present value. It's a present value, That's why. Why have I lost it? 17 should be there. If we do, let me do these calculations this way around. With this first one, biannually, n times m is going to be 5 times 2. So we are going to have a value of 10 for n, and my value for r divided by m, r divided by m is going to be 12 divided by 2 is going to be 6. So to work out the interest payments for this first one, we are going to use 10 for the value for n, 10 periods, and it's going to be 6%. The column for 6%, and it's going to be 10 periods. Does that make sense? And for investment 2, which is quarterly, we are going to use m, n times m is going to be 5 times 4. You're going to use 20 for the value for n, and r divided by m is going to be 12 divided by 4, which is going to be 3. We're going to use 3 in that case. So we want to know what the rand value of the PMT is, which is going to be, where's my calculator? 175,000 rand in this first investment, which is biannually, is going to be times each of those 2 payments is going to be, just make sure I'm looking at the right one, 175 times 6%, 175 times 6%. In other words, each of the 2 annual payments will be paying an interest rate of 6%, which is 12 divided by 2. So my PMT, let me write it over here. My PMT is going to be 10,500. Just go back here. Sorry, let's go back in there. There we go. 10,500. That calculation was 175,000 times 6%. And the 6% is because it's R divided, I must use for the value of R, I must use R divided by M. Then my value for N is going to be 10. N times M, 5 times 2. There, 5 times 2. And my value for R or I is going to be 6, which was 12% divided by twice a year. And then this is on your calculators, you would then say comp future value, and you will get 138,398. I'm just rounding here, 138,398. So that would be then the total amount of interest that we would earn on this investment one, which compounds interest biannually. Then for the second investment, which compounds interest quarterly, I'll do it on this side, our PMT is going to equal 175,000, which is the amount we've got invested, multiplied by 3%. That gives us 5250. Each PMT is going to be 5250. That's 175,000 times 3%. And remember, it's 3% because in each year, we will be earning 1/4 of that 12% interest per annum. So each one of the 4 PMTs, 4 payments during the year, will earn 3% interest. Then N for that one is going to be 20, because N times M is going to be 5 times 4. And my R for that second investment is going to be 3, which is, what did we have? 12 divided by 4, 12% divided by 4, because it's going to be paid every quarter. And then if we comp future value for that one, you should get, and again I'm rounding, 141,069 as the total amount of interest that will be paid over the 5 years for this second investment. Okay. And then remember, the question said calculate the difference in interest earned on both investments. So we then take the 141,069 minus the 138. That gives us the difference. And that was what the question asked us for. 141 minus. These the total amounts are slightly different because the method I've used was the calculator. And this is the amount that you should get there. I want to just go and double check. I will before I post it for you guys tomorrow. Just I don't have the, you can see how this is my handwriting on this original one when we originally did it, and I want to just go and double check to see what my workings were there so I can make sure that that is correct. Sometimes there are errors on these memos and then we correct them when we mark them. But I think that is all right. Yeah, Claude and Hannah, have you sorted out? Yeah. remember that what we are doing is R divided by M. So R is your percentage, 12%, and M for Mary is always the number of times interest will compound in a year. So if interest is being paid quarterly, interest will compound 4 times a year. So it's 12 divided by 4. What 3 is what was the value of 3? Yeah, no, that's correct. Yeah, so in other words, 12 divided by 4 equals 3. That is right, the answer. So 12 over 4, because it's 12% divided by 4 times a year, and then it equals 3%. Yeah. Okay. And then the last question wanted us to then calculate the EAR, calculate the difference in effective rates between both investments. So that's the EAR, and that is one formula that's not on your formula sheet. So I don't know if it is in this. Do they give you the EAR in this textbook again? I know you guys did it. Sure, it must be in the textbook somewhere. You did it last year in second year finance. So your formula for effective annual rate is equal to, if I remember it correctly, just make sure I get it right. It's 1 plus R over M. Where's my little, to the power of M minus 1. And this is in brackets to the power of M. So if we go back here, we'll see, if you have a look at the investment 1, which is the biannual one, 1 plus R, so R must be R over M because there's multiple compounding periods in the year, to the power of M, and M is how many times a year did interest compound. So 12 divided by 6, because interest compounded twice in the year. So it's going to be 1 plus 6 to the power of 2 minus 1. And investment 2, 1 plus R over M, so it's going to be 12 divided by 4, because it's quarterly, to the power of M. M is how many times will interest compound in the year. Interest will compound 4 times because it's quarterly. And then, so this is 1 plus R to the power of M minus 1 equals, and there's the percentage there. And then they also asked for the difference. So then it's just the two answers to EAR subtracted from each other, and that gives us the difference. So don't forget to do, if they've asked for a difference, don't forget to do that part of the question. Always go back and check to see what did they ask me for, because otherwise you'll end up losing that mark, which is what they actually asked us. Yeah, I like this paper, especially for just revision, because it's got a lot of the little, it's a simple paper. It's not overly complicated, but it contains a lot of all the little principles and calculations that you guys need to practice. So it's a good one for revision. Okay. All right, guys, I know we have gone over time, but I wanted to just finish the paper. Anybody got any questions at this point? Anything else you want to ask or say? So I won't chat to you guys again before you write your task, because next Tuesday at this time you will be busy with your task, so there will be no collab. Okay, but remember, anytime during the week, just ask me any questions as you practice questions and as you go through the textbook. And using this paper as an example, you can kind of see where they go with asking different questions. And I will upload this. I have got another test as well that I will upload, the question paper and the answers with different questions, so you can also get some extra practice in questions to attempt. Okay. All right, guys, I'm going to end the recording. Where is it?